when you get into comedy, you pay more attention and you're watching the other people. And I'm just curious your style, because like what I could do is I can do recall. Somebody says something 3 speeches before me, I can incorporate it. I'm not kind of scripted. I'm wondering what type you are and what you've seen with other people, which works best.
And there's so many different styles of comedy. Like I was a big fan, it's harder to say these days, but I was a big fan of Bill Cosby back in the day because of his storytelling style. I loved that storytelling style. And I had, because I used to write stories myself, that's actually how I got into stand-up in the first place. To be honest, I never was like, I want to be a stand-up comedian. I loved stand-up comedy, but I didn't have a great desire to be up in front of crowds because I was a little bit shy. And so but I had this crazy idea. So back in the day when you would write short stories and stuff like that, you would write your short story, send it off to Amazing Stories or one of these other places, right? And so you would put in there, this is pre-internet, you would put in there an SASE, a self-addressed stamp envelope. You put a stamp on there and you put it inside the envelope. That meant so when they were going to reject your story, you were paying for the stamp. But it would take months before you got that stuff back. And so there was such a long sort of process waiting to get potentially, will this magazine pick up this story, whatever it might be. And my head somehow said, if I write a bit of a story, if I write some jokes or something and get on stage, that night I'm published. I have an audience. And somehow that made sense in my head. So my version of getting published quickly was to get up on stage and take the stories that I was crafting, putting together, a bit different than I would in a short story, but stories, life-ish stories, get up on stage and that's being published. And that's sort of how I developed a bit of a storytelling style. I've had a number of authors come to me, even really well-established authors, and ask me about my dialogue and how I make it sound so real. I think a lot of that came from doing stand-up comedy, because it was a speaking style of storytelling. And when you start to do that, then all you got to do is incorporate different portions of your personality. Now you have two characters talking to each other, and it makes for amazing dialogue.